The story opens with a sky blanketed in white snow, where winter storms pile up taller than a person's head. Even in the middle of summer, the snow never truly stops falling. This land is brutally unforgiving. Yet on rare occasions that happen only once every few decades, there will be a year when summer visits so fiercely the ground turns to dust, and this was one of those years. Hilda's soft voice sounded from outside. "Hey, Ulrich, you never seem to age, nor do you ever disappear." Ulrich replied, neither fast nor slow, indeed. Hilda's face wore a smile as she asked, "So tell me, isn't a life like that just a chain of suffering?" Now Ulrich finally spoke his thoughts. "Time keeps rushing on, and I alone am left behind. Even the elves, those who seem immortal, in the end must face their own fate. And even the first ancestor dragon, born long before me, has turned to dust in some distant land." Ulrich cast his gaze forward into the void. "I've watched too many people leave, and many more will have to go." He began to walk forward while speaking. "So the answer to your question is, of course, it is very painful. Nevertheless, precisely because we are mortal, memories will fade, the present becomes past, leaving only scattered fragments, and that pain will eventually turn into nostalgia." Hearing this, Hilda asked with a smile, "Then, one day, will I only be a memory in your heart too?" The answer she received held a painful truth. "I'm afraid so." However, Hilda held no blame. "If you say you will remember me forever, that would be an extremely rare happiness for me." Then her hand gently reached forward. "Please listen to me. I have a request to ask of you." Hilda gently pressed her forehead to Ulrich's. "When I close my eyes for the last time, I beg you, accept my title." Her voice brimmed with trust for him. "Rule this land, protect the people, and carry on the journey for me." And in Ulrich's eyes, reflecting the image of the other, "Keep my likeness in your mind, for as long as you can." Old memories were stirred, despite Hilda's wish. They had known each other since Hilda was a young girl. "My memories of her will also one day fade." Ulrich's recollection continued, but he knew well that the ones who shared those memories would also be gone in time. The present Hilda smiled and placed the leader's ring into his hand. "A day will come when even the faintest memories grow hazy." And Ulrich tightened his grip, as if silently promising to keep his vow to her. "Yet my life still goes on." Hilda's death was inevitable. Ulrich now gently touched her tombstone. A voice suddenly rose from behind her. The steward spoke respectfully. "It's still cold, please come inside." But Ulrich thought to himself, "Because of that, I must keep moving forward." Then he voiced his feelings aloud. "Yes, that's how it should be." Ulrich began to step inside, even though new reunions would surely end in partings. His steps were slow, as if reaffirming that all the time we spent together won't be only sorrow. The land of Dithmarschen, located in the far north of the kingdom of Osnover, this place is the gateway to a perilous frozen peninsula, which is why monsters keep popping up to make trouble. Indeed, the savage north winds even blow away whatever warmth summer tries to bring, turning it into an icy land that never holds on to so much as a little warmth. Alonso's steady voice rose as he cradled a cup of tea. "And out here in this remote spot, I want to entrust you with a responsibility." The gentle call was enough to make the other person choke on their drink. Roberta's face showed she couldn't quite believe it. She blinked in confusion and asked, "Pardon me, father me." Alonso remained calm and continued, "It's a place I know well. I once served as the head priest there, though humble in facilities. A small chapel rather than a grand cathedral. Appointments of priests there are still made by the Holy Father himself." But before he finished, she interrupted. "Please wait, Father Alonso." He paid her no mind and went on with his long-winded pitch. "That land is unlike anywhere I've been. Most residents live like nomads, Eastern customs have crept in, and the people live in odd tents." This time Roberta had to cut in loudly, "Father Alonso." Her hand reached for the tea as she said, "Forgive my bluntness, but let me be frank for a moment." Roberta checked the facts seriously. "So you mean that just last month the head priest of Dithmarschen disappeared, leaving the post vacant, and now you're nominating me to fill it? Someone like me, ordained only 2 years, can I really do it?" Alonso merely smiled and nodded at that. "Yes, exactly so. It's simple, isn't it?" However, sweat soon dotted Roberta's brow. "Simple. Shouldn't the first task be to find the missing head priest?" Seeing her worried look, Alonso gently set down his cup and added, "Don't trouble yourself about your predecessor." His voice was warm and instructive. "Your duty is to depart at once to take up the new post, and to fulfill the role of head priest well. I'm sure the Holy Father desires the same." But hearing this did little to ease Roberta's mind. "A priest appointed by the Pope has disappeared, and we're just going to ignore it. This is suspicious. What exactly is Father Alonso plotting?" She watched him carefully and thought to herself, "Given the situation, it seems Father already penciled my name in as successor, and now his words are just ceremony." She forced aside to stay calm. "You always act like this, but out of all people, why must it be me?" To that Alonso didn't hesitate to answer sincerely, It's because you remind me of myself when I was young. No sooner had he spoken than Roberta hurriedly smoothed her face in embarrassed confusion. I didn't mean physically, mind you. He leaned forward slightly and continued, Roberta. The tale of the past unfolded. I took you in when your parents abandoned you, and I myself ordained you. Alonso seemed lost in memory. Though we share no blood, we have been close for many years. Sunlight sifted through the window panes as he spoke, so it's natural we should resemble one another. Roberta remained bewildered, as Alonso continued in a steady tone. In my youth, I truly performed well as head priest in Dithmarschen. Now a smile crossed his face, and I'm sure you will do the same. Roberta then recounted, I was raised by Alonso, my childhood filled with tales of his adventures rather than fairy tales. Her thoughts turned over Alonso's words, yet I've never once heard about the time he spent in Dithmarschen. The horse walked slowly, and Roberta kept wondering what on earth he'd been hiding in this land. Very quickly, they arrived at Dithmarschen. Roberta looked at the fortress before her and made up her mind fast. Well then, I'll just have to uncover the truth myself. Her horse stopped in front of the gate, and I did overhear some rumors along the way. The guards barked coldly, halt. He watched Roberta and demanded, where do you come from? Roberta raised a hand and explained, I'm a cleric of Ganymea, here to pay respects to the Lord. This immediately drew someone's attention. A priest, you say. The large figure of Bernhard then appeared. Are you really from Ganymea? Roberta couldn't help being startled by the size difference. Even on horseback she met this man's eye. Perhaps he's part giant. Yes, my name is Roberta. Father Alonso sent me. I'm from the diocese at the Great Nuwa Temple. Hearing this, Bernhard asked skeptically, sent personally by Father Alonso. May I ask what your relationship is with him? Roberta answered plainly, he's the one who took me in. Upon hearing that, a smile spread across the man's face. I see, wonderful news indeed. Father Alonso is as benevolent as ever. Then Bernhard kissed Roberta's hand in greeting. Pardon the late introduction. I'm Bernhard Mayer. Call me Bernhard. I serve under the Lord by his grace. He glanced aside and said proudly, time flies. When Father Alonso was here, he was only in his 30s, and now it's time for his successor to take over. However, this made Roberta uneasy. Excuse me, I'd like to see the Lord first. Bernhard led them inside and explained, unfortunately the Lord is not present, and likely won't return for some time, but meanwhile I can show you the chapel if you wish. This made Roberta curious. This Lord, you say. She quickly recalled the gossip she'd heard. The master of Dithmarschen didn't seem like an ordinary man. Records also showed he had succeeded someone named Hilda, and had ruled here for 300 continuous years. Some said his longevity came from having both human and elf blood. But even so, 3 centuries is absurd. By now he should be frail and clinging to his last breath. A question formed in her mind, yet he still manages things. May I ask what keeps him busy? Bernhard didn't try to hide it. He went to the outskirts to perform a christening for a newborn. The more Roberta heard, the more baffled she became. Only a priest may perform that rite. Could there be another priest here besides the head priest? This time he just tilted his head and replied curtly no. The explanation came quickly. The Lord himself would preside. Roberta's face showed surprise. What? She almost stammered. He wouldn't just attend, he'd perform it himself. An unordained man presiding. Then she bombarded him with questions. Surely the Lord must understand the sanctity of infant rites, yet he dares to take it upon himself. Faced with her concern, Bernhard scratched his head. If the ritual fails, evil spirits might seize the child's body. However, Roberta couldn't stop wondering what was wrong with these people. Why were they so blasé? Don't they grasp the danger? Very quickly she made up her mind. Damn it, enough is enough. Turning her horse around, Roberta pressed Bernhard. Where is the Lord right now? I need to see him at once. The sky had turned toward evening, yet a crowd still gathered at one spot. Roberta looked that way with a question in her heart. Is it over there? She hurriedly dismounted. If the ceremony has started, I must stop it at all costs. The baby in the man's arms was crying robustly. Seeing that, Roberta felt some relief. The infant was safe. She glanced around frantically to locate him. So, where is the Lord? In an instant, Roberta felt lost in a sea of people. She lightly tapped a nearby shoulder and asked, excuse me, where is the Lord, please? The kind girl explained there. He's standing right there. Roberta's gaze turned once more toward the baby in the man's arms and its forehead shining. What? The light reflected in Roberta's eyes. Some teaching came back to her unconsciously. Mana cannot dwell in those not given the sacrament, so newborns must undergo the rite immediately. The baby looked healthy and adorable once the light faded. Through the priest, a name is inscribed in heaven, and Mana may then inhabit the new life. I witnessed it myself. Mana poured from the forehead and melded wholly into the child's body. Roberta watched and murmured, that man actually pulled it off. But then confusion clouded her face. How could this happen? They said there were no priests here. A flurry of questions bubbled up. Who on earth is this person? At that moment, Ulrich handed the baby back to its mother and said, "Look at the way she dashed over here." He turned slowly toward Roberta. It seems Bernhard has put his foot in it again. The more he watched her, the less he could believe his eyes. Someone who's lived 300 years. His time among the living defies imagination. As Ulrich approached, Roberta blurted out her question. "Are you the one?" And he didn't hesitate to admit it. "Indeed, I am the Lord of Dithmarschen, Ulrich the First." Ulrich stood before Roberta and introduced himself once more. "I am Ulrich, the Lord who rules Dithmarschen." On her side, she observed and judged silently. He stood proud in the sun, so he's certainly not a vampire, and that tall build rules out dwarf. Roberta's face betrayed astonishment. No, even if he isn't purely human, maintaining such a youthful appearance at that age is impossible. Ulrich's steady voice rose again. "I expected you would arrive soon, though I did not expect you to come so quickly." After these words came a sincere invitation. "You must be cold. Come inside for some tea and a chat." The two of them quickly moved to another spot. Roberta never took her eyes off Ulrich's movements as he gently pushed a cup of tea toward her and asked, "This tea has a slightly strong aroma. Is that all right, Roberta?" Only then did Roberta, suspicious, counter-question, "Do you really know who I am?" Ulrich explained calmly, "Alonso and I keep in regular contact. He confided that he wanted to send you here to take over as head priest. So now you understand, it was all arranged from the start." Another question popped up as Roberta took the cup. "But what kind of tea is this?" Ulrich kept a cool expression and replied, "The locals call it Songwa tea." Yet Roberta was actually enjoying it. Songwa tea. The Songwa I know doesn't smell like this at all. Her face twisted at the taste. It's completely different. Opposite her, Ulrich quietly sipped his, explaining that it's harvested from twisted pine trees. He thoughtfully added that every creature in this land grows under the influence of the demon realm. Though of the same species, most things here are a bit different from what she's seen before. Then he warned, "You can't be picky about food here, so better get used to it." Roberta replied gently, "I heard the climate here was brutal and freezing." But she recalled the place she'd arrived at and admitted, "Actually, it's not as bad as I imagined when you really step foot here." Ulrich took the opportunity to explain. "The weather has only started improving in the last few years." He closed his eyes and continued. "Temperatures are rising and no longer strictly tied to the season." Then he concluded sagely, "Perhaps it's a sign that the Minor Ice Age is coming to an end." Roberta blinked and asked, "The Minor Ice Age?" His tone prompted him to ask, "Do you understand how people usually divide historical eras?" Roberta quickly answered, "Of course. The span from an empire's rise to its fall is considered an age." He nodded in confirmation. "Yes, that's the human standard of measurement." Ulrich held up 3 fingers as he began. "Currently we live in the Third Era. After 2 empires fell, the present empire formed." He continued with his lecture. "The Minor Ice Age began around the collapse of the Second Empire. It resembles the ancient Ice Age, though the temperature drop wasn't as severe." Roberta listened silently to the lesson. "For that reason, we and the elves called it the Minor Ice Age to distinguish it from a true Ice Age." She then asked slowly, "The Second Empire fell, and 1,400 years have passed since the Jocasta dynasty was officially established." The question hung for Ulrich. "Yet you speak as if you'd personally lived through that era, didn't you?" As if reading her thoughts, Ulrich stated directly, "You're wondering who the man standing before you really is, aren't you?" He asked softly another question. "Tell me, what did Alonso say to you about me?" Mentioning that made Roberta a bit annoyed. "He didn't tell me anything, but rumors say the Lord is a half-elf who's lived here for 300 years. Ulrich repeated slowly, 300 years. This time he let out an exclamation. Has time really flown that fast? Then Ulrich began to explain. "Let me make this clear for you." His face was too serious for a joke. "I am not of mixed blood. I am entirely a pure human." At this, Roberta's brows knitted with suspicion. "I'd believe you more if you claimed to be a slow-aging half-blood." Ulrich broke into a self-satisfied smile. "Oh really?" That flippant attitude annoyed her. Was he being serious or just messing with her? Ulrich gently set the teacup down and continued, "Whatever else, what I say is true, and I don't intend to force you to believe it right now, however, if I may offer one piece of advice." He looked at her and reminded her that overthinking isn't always the smartest move. Just watch, and the answer will reveal itself in time. The next words formed into a sentence that made Roberta study him. "You were only just appointed head priest, right?" Outside the door, a group of children had appeared. Seeing them, Ulrich immediately rose. "We should end our talk here. Others seem to be waiting for me." As he stepped toward the door, he instructed, "I will finish presiding over today's ceremony. From next time, you will take primary responsibility, so then." At last, Ulrich closed the conversation with a greeting. I look forward to working with you, Roberta. Speaking of which, the dream of immortality has persisted through every age. It's the arrogant longing to reach the stature of gods, and the primal instinct to cling to what one already has. Yet fate never allows that to happen. Thus mortals live in gratitude, simply because they still exist. Roberta had been standing to the side watching Ulrich's every move. The infant sacrament here carries deep meaning. It proves a child has endured this harsh land long enough to receive the rite. Her body trembled in waves from the cold, yet the ceremonial rules here were a chaotic mess. How could a sacrament work amid such disorder? The suspicious things here seemed never-ending. Then a voice from behind cut through her thoughts. Mistress Priest. An old man appeared offering, "Please have a sip of liquor." Roberta was so startled she asked, "Pardon." He slowly explained, "This drink will warm your body frozen by the chill." The kindness made her smile, "Thank you," but inwardly she worried. Would its taste be as weird as that Songwa tea? Nevertheless, Roberta decided to close her eyes and drink. Well, drinking it beats freezing to death. She was surprised by the flavor. It was really quite good. The silver-whiskered man beside her replied gently, "Is that so? This bottle has been aged for over 60 years. The origin of the bottle was then revealed. It's a gift I received from Lord Ulrich when I was a child. The old man slowly recounted the tale. One day my father and uncle and I went hunting. We chased prey deep into the forest, and unlucky for us, we encountered a monster. The adults were injured protecting me, but somehow I got them both onto the sled and sped forward without daring to look back. Lord Ulrich proclaimed that my courage saved everyone, and so he gifted me this bottle. But at that moment, a thought flashed through my mind. I wished I could savor this meaningful drink in the final moments of my life. So I entrusted it to Lord Ulrich for safekeeping. A warm smile spread across the silver-whiskered man's face. And today, after 60 long years, his hand unconsciously tightened on the bottle. At last, he's returned it to me. Then he went on, "I know you find him suspicious, priestess. I fully understand that feeling of yours." His gaze drifted into the distance. Yet from the day we were born and received the infant sacrament until our last breath in the arms of loved ones, the place he was staring at was Ulrich's spot. We all live under the watch of that unchanging silhouette. The silver-whiskered man added again, "Every subject in this land can attest to that. So I hope you'll try to view him with a more open mind." At this, Roberta rubbed the cup in her hands, looked up at the sky, and pondered silently. "My head is full of inexplicable things. I can't stop thinking about them. Did Father Alonso feel like this on his first day here?" A line of thought simply formed. "If I stay here long enough, will everything become clearer?" Roberta's face grew very serious. The real meaning of my coming here. Why did Father send me? What she kept wondering about was Ulrich. Who exactly is that man? The door opened slightly so those outside could hear. "Sir, I've heard you've lived a very long life, almost immortal." Rashid was speaking to Ulrich and said he hoped the Lord might know something about the curse on my son. Roberta felt a spike of worry at this, a curse. Then he pointed to the child beside him and explained, "The boy standing next to me. I'll tell the truth. He should be an adult with children of his own by now." There was a strange light shining in the boy's eyes. Yet, Rashid continued, "Since the day he suddenly returned from the dead, everything has completely changed." Roberta neatly wrote the letter. "Dear Father Alonso, it's been over a week since I arrived here. From the moment I came, I began carrying out the duties of head pastor. After my predecessor vanished, the parish fell into chaos, so to restore order, I recruited helpers and addressed long-pending sacraments." Now she stood with arms crossed and spoke loudly. "There was some negligence in the recent sacrament. We really need to discuss proper rites for conducting the sacrament." A question arose. Shouldn't at least the incense and anointing oil be properly prepared? Unexpectedly, Roberta was met with his puzzled look. "Why do that?" Roberta couldn't believe her ears and had to explain again. "You're asking why? What? It's the correct ritual to show reverence to Lord Hestio." Speaking of which, Hestio is the foster son of the noble goddess Galaimia, a mortal personally taken in and cared for by the goddess. A legend goes that one day, while dwelling with the gods in the celestial realm, Hestio saw a group of people trembling on the cold ground. Moved by compassion, he descended and gifted them fire. From that fateful moment, mankind began to follow and worship him, both as a father and as a god. Whenever they hold a ceremony, they light a flame to honor him by producing smoke from the flame just extinguished. He slowly offered his view, saying they revere him might be off the mark. Summoning him fits much better. Roberta sighed at those words. Here he goes with his weird talk again. However, he didn't stop and kept telling them. The real purpose of lighting, then snuffing the flame, is to call Hestio back. Ulrich's hand sheltered the candle because every time the flame goes out, Hestio appears and relights it himself. The truth is he persistently rekindles the fire to spare them the effort. yet they misunderstand and think he manifests whenever the flame is extinguished. Roberta frowned, half skeptical, and asked if he truly possessed such detailed knowledge, had he actually met Lord Hestio. But Ulrich's demeanor was deadly serious. All these rituals actually sprang from a misunderstanding. The gods never taught them to do such things. He lazily added, nobody knows why. How on earth would those things help the sacraments? Faced with his casual attitude, Roberta had to remind him, please remember, I am a priest. Only then did Ulrich gently set the candle on the table. Don't worry too much, I remember perfectly well. He suddenly changed the subject. I tell you this because I said the exact same thing to Alonso. However, Roberta doubted again. Father Alonso never said anything like that. Ulrich explained, not rushed. Can't say for sure, that's my guess. He followed with his own conclusion. Because we live in the land of one-eyed folk. Roberta's letter continued. Dear Father, I am not an overly devout person by nature. By now anger had made Roberta grip the pen so hard the nib split. Her writing speed suddenly spiked as she poured out her frustrations. Perhaps it stems from my skeptical nature, yet strangely no one has accused him of heresy. Roberta added from personal experience, even if I try to learn more about him, while listening to the voice from across, my lord. The man holding a baby smiled and continued. He's an extraordinary man. Have you heard the tale of him slaying a giant and breaking into a dragon's sleeping den? Another gray-haired woman offered similar praise. He truly is highly observant. Even the smallest things catch his attention. Roberta's face showed helplessness, and the chatter went on. People here treat him like a living god. Remembering this tired her out, and that very fact made me feel like a weirdo. It made me feel utterly out of place. Then Roberta confessed in the letter. I must stay here another 10 years. Will I truly adapt to this place? Having finished the letter, Roberta left the room. She looked down the long corridor, and if there were one more inconvenience to mention, it's that I'm lodged in the Lord's manor. The thought made Roberta uncomfortable. The clergy housing was in such disrepair that I had no other choice. She walked, eyes scanning around, thoughts never ceasing. People say he let me stay out of charity, but to me it's a forced coexistence with a suspicious lord. However, at that moment, Roberta noticed something. The silhouettes of Rashid and Rafar appeared with an indescribable air of mystery. Roberta immediately wondered if visitors could really come to such a remote place, out in this treacherous terrain. She watched their figures and thought to herself, the path leads straight. Curiosity lit Roberta's face. Are they heading to the Lord's study? Once inside the room, Ulrich spoke first. So you came here to see me. Rashid respectfully explained. I've heard many rumors about you, my lord, so I braved the trip to seek you out. His expression was mysterious as he said you've lived an extraordinarily long life. Has it been 300 years? I've even heard you're nearly immortal. At that point, Ulrich didn't hesitate to counter. Is that what you came here to verify? Meanwhile, Roberta stood outside the door to listen, curious about the secret behind my agelessness. What he'd just said was completely unexpected to her. However, Rashid quickly denied it. That wasn't my main goal. The real reason I sought you out, my lord, is something else. He removed the hood from Rafar as he spoke. My name is Rashid. I come from the distant kingdom of Ararik. Rashid's gaze fixed on his son. I thought that among all people, perhaps you might know something about the curse afflicting my son. Roberta outside began to feel uneasy too. A curse. Ulrich slowly stepped closer and inspected the child carefully. How old are you now? Rashid didn't try to hide it. I'm 67. I fathered this child when I was 21. He continued, so I'll be as honest as I can. He should be a grown man with children of his own by now. A sheen of sweat began to appear on Rashid's face. Yet, the memory made him shiver. Since the day he returned from death once, everything was utterly overturned. Outside, Roberta couldn't hide her astonishment. Do you mean that? Ulrich looked up and pressed further. This child actually died and came back. Rashid hesitated, then answered. Yes, that's correct. His eyes widened as he recalled it. It was an utterly unexpected accident. The truth was stated plainly. The boy drowned in a stream. Rashid recounted how they handled it. My wife and I personally confirmed his passing. We even held a proper funeral, but not long after, something strange happened. Voices suddenly cried out from his grave. Rashid continued to tell what he did when he heard it. We rushed to dig up the grave and open the coffin, only to find the boy inside, sobbing his heart out. From that day on, the child stopped maturing. His mind regressed to that of an infant, and he remembered nothing except that I am his father. We always bury the dead intact, so they can pass to the next world in union with the earth. But my son could not be laid to rest like that. As Ulrich reached out to touch Rafar, Rashid kept telling the tale. Cursed by the gods, he cannot move on, so he had to return to this world in that state. His eyes went wide, almost dazed, saying he defended the divine at 8 years old when suddenly Ulrich snapped. Stop that lie at once. Ulrich touched Rafar as he exposed Rashid. Ararik, you say. I recall that is a country way out in the Far East, yet you claim you traveled all that way just to see me. Ulrich's sharp gaze drilled into him. That's impossible. You were just wandering, chasing rumors, and then showed up here, isn't that so? Rashid panicked when caught. Illness or curses can be healed by priests. If they fail, there are wizards and alchemists. Ulrich's eyes stayed fixed on Rashid. If all those people failed, then it certainly isn't a curse. He lowered his voice and made his demand. Tell the truth. The pressure Ulrich exuded was considerable. What exactly did you do to this child? Rashid's face was left only with terror as he remembered that. Speaking of about 30 years ago, chaos engulfed the whole region, with nothing but orders to attack. They were noisy as the gate slowly opened. The city gate was swinging wide. Humans charged in recklessly. Charge in now. However, a voice called from behind. Hey, Rashid. He stepped forward slowly and explained. It's an order from the boss. Get in there and capture that old man. Rashid blinked and asked back, capture who exactly? The soldier shrugged off details. I don't know the specifics either. The words carried a hint of mystery, but according to what the boss said, the man is rumored to be an alchemist researching immortality. The fortress lay baking under the blazing desert sun. Contrary to the flashy exterior, there were no signs of life here. The whole area was utterly silent, not a soul in sight. Could he have fled far away already? Rashid's footsteps echoed loudly in the empty corridor. His eyes darted around looking for anything amiss. If that's true, this is going to be a big hassle. Pushing open a door, he found a pot boiling furiously. Rashid found it odd. Seems the man left in such a hurry he didn't even put out the fire. And then something caught his eye. On the table sat a test tube containing a strange liquid. Quickly he recognized it. This is. A cold shout rang out a second later. Don't you dare touch it with those filthy hands. Then a figure barreled into the room. Rashid reacted fast and drew his sword at once, but the other had already struck first. His eyes widened in horror. This light is. A moment later, a terrible explosion occurred. Manhwa. The room quickly became a complete mess. The alchemist coughed from the thick smoke. Only then did he realize the test tube had spilled onto the floor. The alchemist kneeled in terror. No way. Then he scrambled to scoop the liquid back into the tube. My precious treasure, cursed, damned cursed. After that, he staggered away. He didn't know Rashid had already regained consciousness. His sword thrust forward with force, piercing through the alchemist's chest. His body convulsed. Only pained groans escaped his mouth. The other's red blood stained Rashid's hand. He coldly withdrew his sword. The alchemist clutched his wound in agony. Suddenly his cloak caught fire. Rashid did nothing and just stood there, watching the alchemist turn into a living torch. But very quickly, he fell straight into the abyss of remorse. Only at that moment did I realize the bitter truth. Well, he could only stare at the test tube on the floor. The young man I'd just slain was the alchemist himself. Rashid was quickly bandaged. Didn't they say it was an old man? The man beside him fell into thought. Could they mean he was seeking immortality? Maybe he'd found a way to slow his age. He felt a chill at that, so the man was on the verge of eternal life. If I hadn't killed him, who knows, he might have actually succeeded. He cut him off. Listen to me, Rashid. The other's glance was icy. Throughout history, fools obsessed with immortality never achieved it, nor did they end well. His words were cold but practical. Chasing that sort of thing only leads to a gruesome death, just like that man. After saying that, he turned to leave. Maybe it's for the best that it's over. Don't torment yourself over killing that alchemist. The boss was just briefly deluded. He'll forget it soon enough. What he didn't know was that Rashid had already hidden the vial. Though I fully understood what he said, I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It was the alchemist's elixir. Over here, Roberta hid behind the door, eavesdropping. The youthfulness the man displayed fed my hope fiercely. Excitement filled Rashid's eyes. It wasn't the lust for immortality that drove me then, but the thought I could sell it for a fortune. He glanced at his son. However, right after that incident, my son had a terrible accident. Holding Rafar's limp body, Rashid opened the vial. At that moment, I had to do whatever I could. Even if it was a treasure, he only wanted to save his son's life, if this truly was a divine elixir. So Rashid poured the liquid straight into Rafar's mouth. I believed it would restore my son to how he was. But he didn't get better and grew weaker. Even after giving him the potion, he didn't wake, until his breath stopped, and thinking him dead, I painfully buried him. Yet one day screams began to come from his grave. Rashid's voice choked with emotion. My lord, everything that happened after was exactly as I've described. Blood ties are the strongest bond. My wife and I never gave up on our child and kept caring for him. At that time, Rafar was gnawing his hand raw, yet before dying she denied it. Rashid's words seemed to confirm Ulrich's thought. that the child no longer seemed to be our son. He was about to say more when Rafar suddenly bolted, so, seeing that Rashid quickly grabbed his shoulder. "No, you little brat." And very quickly, a painful scream rang out in the room. He held his hand marked with the child's teeth. Suddenly, the basket of apples on the table tumbled to the floor. Rafar snatched them up like a wild animal. Then Ulrich coldly spoke. "I can hardly imagine the suffering you've endured to come all this way." His eyes pierced the boy's soul. "No one can tell the root of this monstrous ailment, and you've surely heard countless brutal verdicts that your son is beyond save." Ulrich's question struck at Rashid's weak spot. "Up until now, do you still believe this creature is your own blood?" He still defended Rafar. "No matter how beastly his behavior, he still has the shape of my son. How could a parent reject their own child?" Ulrich sighed, still bandaging Rashid's wound. "How pathetic." His gaze coldly bore down. "Just like your wife said, that thing isn't your son at all. From the very start, it never had true life." He was furious at that. "What, sir? What are you implying?" Ulrich's eyes flicked to the knife at Rashid's belt because of that. In the next second, he snatched it. There was only one way to settle this, and pulled it out to the old man's horror. Roberta saw and threw the door open, rushing in. "Wait." Ulrich's steps slowed toward Rafar. Roberta's voice rang out in terror. "Please stop, my lord." But he didn't listen. His expression was murderous, like death come to collect. The next scene made her eyes widen in horror. Then Rashid appeared right behind Ulrich. Drops of red blood were already dripping onto the floor, but not Rafar's, his. A gush of red poured from Ulrich's mouth. "I'm no stranger to this kind of behavior from someone from the kingdom of Ararik." Though in agony his voice didn't tremble. "So you, hidden another blade on you." Cold sweat streamed down Rashid's face from stress and despair. "I'm so sorry, my lord. I was truly backed into a corner." At that moment, Roberta's terrified scream echoed. "What the hell is going on here?" Her small frame shot forward. Facing the outsider's arrival, Rashid was startled. "What is that?" A dark thought flashed in his mind. "Don't tell me that girl eavesdropped on the whole conversation." Biting his teeth, Rashid snarled, "Damn." He immediately swung the sword toward Roberta. "I absolutely cannot leave any witnesses alive." The sharp metal flashed, reflecting her furious eyes. Roberta didn't sit there tied up. She threw a punch, then aimed straight at the hand, holding Rashid's sword. Quickly, she wrested the weapon away. Roberta's grip was mighty. She nearly broke his bones. Rashid's shout finally made Rafar react. Roberta darted past him to Ulrich's side. "Master, are you all right?" Just then she noticed something odd. "Allow me to treat him right now." The apple core in Rafar's hand thudded to the floor. Then he lunged forward like a wild wolf. Roberta reflexively struck back, but then the hand gripping her sword went slack. Ulrich's words Roberta overheard echoed in her head. "Exactly as your wife insisted, that one isn't your flesh and blood. From the very start, it never truly revived." In the end, Roberta couldn't bring herself to strike. Could that really be true? How can he be so certain? She stood frozen as Rafar bared his fangs and lunged. Yet the child clearly had the shape of a real, flesh-and-blood kid. And then a horrifying scene unfolded, so terrifying that Rashid could barely stand. Luckily, Roberta was unscathed, because the one being bitten was Ulrich. His voice went hoarse as Rafar clamped down on his throat. "Roberta." Ulrich's eyes gradually lost focus. Just an empty shell with no soul, which meant. Speaking of which, the creature really tore his throat like a wild animal. No hesitation. Ulrich collapsed to the floor with Roberta in stunned shock. Red blood spread across the floor like a funeral blossom. Rafar didn't stop there. He howled ear-piercingly and lunged at her. Now Roberta had no more hesitation. "Oh, Ganymia." She shut her eyes tight and slashed at Rafar. Cleanse these muddled, savage-born things, but the next sight made her recoil. From his severed arm grew vines that looked exactly like blood vessels. Roberta went paper pale. What the heck are those vines? Then she realized, of course, those vines filled the inside of this child's body. In the next second, Roberta thrust mercilessly into Rafar's belly. The small body collapsed to the ground at once. She pointed her sword at Rafar and snarled, "A pathetic little abomination posing as a human. Open your eyes and see clearly, Rashid." His face went pale. Did he even hear that? "Witness with your own eyes the truth about the one you've called your son." Rafar rose again, moving slowly, looking nothing like a living person. Behind him, Ulrich's red blood still flowed across the cold tile. But then it began to twitch strangely, as if with a will of its own. Ulrich lay motionless, with no sign of life. Suddenly, his fingertips started to twitch slightly. Roberta didn't dare lower her sword. Though the arm had been severed, not a single drop of blood fell. Could it be it feels no pain at all? She scrambled to think of how to fight back. then the target she had to destroy was. In the next instant, something unexpected happened. Ulrich had woken and stood towering behind him like a statue. He didn't hesitate to grab Rafar by the hair and ripped his head off with a jerk, like a toy. Rafar's whole body collapsed before Roberta. She was momentarily unable to react to this bizarre chain of events. What, my lord? The man who had been gasping on the ground was now looming before Roberta. How could this be? Ulrich said nothing, only exhaled. Then the drops of blood on the floor suddenly leapt up and returned to their owner. Roberta gaped at the scene. His blood was flowing back into his body by itself. Today felt like a dream. How could such an absurd phenomenon even happen? Ulrich's wounds healed at breakneck speed. This was the answer to. His face remained cold as ever. How on earth have I lasted this long? Roberta was dumbfounded by the sight. His belly was ripped open. Even his throat had been torn wide. She had seen firsthand how brutally Ulrich was attacked. With injuries like that, it would be no surprise if he died. Everything was beyond Roberta's understanding. So why? How could he still be alive? Her eyes landed on his healed neck. No medicine or magic she knew could reverse blood flow and seal wounds flawlessly like that. Roberta's throat felt clogged. What the heck is going on? Just then Rashid leapt toward his son. His eyes showed agony, but no tears could fall, my lord. Rashid clung to a last thread of hope. Has my poor son been dead for ages? Ulrich didn't mince words. Yes, since that accident. The old man carefully lifted Rafar's body. So then, what is this thing standing before me? Ulrich coldly looked down. It's merely a grotesque product of an alchemist's hand. And he crushed Rashid's hope completely. A parasite borrowing its host to live. You thought you gave your son a miracle potion, but he didn't actually wake then. That vial was never a treasure. It was a curse, perhaps because it needed time to burrow into the body before fully seizing control of the host. His voice went ragged. But why does it cling to me as if I were truly its father? Ulrich's expression didn't flicker. This thing using your son as shelter operates only on snatches of leftover memory. His words were brutal but true. It's pure instinct to survive. Even if it savagely attacks when it hears you cry, it doesn't protect you, it only shields itself. Only then did Rashid accept reality. Turns out everything my wife said all along was true. Ulrich knelt beside him. It wasn't only your wife who saw the truth. He had Rashid's actions in the palm of his hand. I'm sure among those you've met someone warned you the same, that this child is an empty shell and must be ended. Ulrich also suspected this wasn't the first time. Did you always swing your sword to kill anyone who dared speak such truth? Just to cover up a monster, one not even of your blood. From the start you knew everything, yet in the end you stubbornly denied your child's death, choosing to defy the natural order. And when someone exposed the truth, Rashid chose the most extreme path. You've stained countless innocent lives with blood just to deceive yourself. Ulrich didn't rage. In a steady voice, he pointed out Rashid's mistake. To cover an initial error, you've caused too many to die unjustly. The old man seemed newly awakened. I truly lacked the courage to face my son's death again. It was all my delusion. I am the guilty one. Rashid pressed his hand to his son's cheek, sobbing without sound. But is he really not my son? My poor child's body has been taken over by a monster. His voice choked with grief. Please tell me, did my son suffer even after death because of my mistakes? Did that child's soul? The room's air suddenly turned mournful. Could he find peace in the afterlife? When the words ended, no one could utter another. Ulrich broke the silence. Listen carefully, Rashid. And then he was so cold. There's no such thing as an afterlife. Even Roberta's eyes widened in shock. Only this harsh world exists, and the final end we call death. At last, Ulrich offered one consoling line. So your son did not endure any torment. Those words finally cleared Rashid's mind, and then he was escorted away. They also coordinated testimony for the investigation. A fair sentence awaited him once the trial began. In the end, evil was punished, payment for the departed souls he had long ignored. Things slowly returned to their course, yet after all that turmoil another trouble was quietly sprouting. Hey, have you heard the news? The maids whispered as they worked. They say the Lord was attacked by an assassin. What really? Nearby, Roberta had heard it all. People only passed it along as rumor. Dithmarschen remained as calm as if nothing had happened. When Bernhard Mayer heard, he kept asking, "Thankfully you're safe," but that made Roberta angrier. Even when the Lord was nearly murdered, the townsfolk seemed utterly unfazed, though that room was clearly a sea of blood. With that thought, her steps headed somewhere, but only when she saw the reality did she begin to understand everything. Roberta came to a stop before Ulrich, living daily beside someone who'd long since defied all rules. He was busy writing and didn't bother to look up. "Roberta, are you holding 10,000 questions for me?" Her face screamed startled. Why would you suddenly ask that? Only then did Ulrich grant her a glance. All her thoughts were written plainly on her face. He had already read Roberta like a book. Don't hesitate, ask. You seem a mess inside. How did I perceive that child's truth, or how I miraculously survived? Aren't you curious? But she chose to ask nothing. No, I'm fine. In truth, Roberta found it hard to speak. Of course I'm full of curiosity. I've been nursing 100 questions. The scene of that day flashed through her mind, yet there is no afterlife. The cold declaration he made then carried more weight than any sermon he'd ever led. This contradicted everything Roberta had been taught. The scripture plainly states that after death the soul splits into two paths. The righteous are led to heaven, while the wicked are cast into dark hell. In the stories people cling to, the world after death comforts many lost souls, yet this man heartlessly denied it all. After everything, Ulrich's eyes remained calm. As high priest I should have challenged. Roberta looked at him seriously, yet in those words there wasn't a hint of deceit. But actually she was so flustered her hands were twisted together. That's why she couldn't bring herself to ask more. Roberta felt manipulated like a puppet, for perhaps the truth he held surpassed beyond the limits my mind can bear. For a moment I felt utterly drained, as if every belief I clung to would dissolve into smoke, so Roberta's gaze fell tiredly. Temporarily, I won't pursue the answer. Ulrich exhaled, oh, very well. Then he calmly dropped a shocking line. Unsurprisingly, you're very much like Alonso. At that, she blinked wide, excuse me. His hands laced together. The boy had the same curious streak as you, but before asking anything, he always thought it through extremely carefully. Roberta inwardly shivered, that boy. Her look toward him grew stranger. He'd once voiced similar fears that his worldview might collapse. Saying this, Ulrich's tone grew nostalgic. Now that I think about it, those who stayed longest by my side all shared that same temperament. A familiar silhouette surfaced in his mind, even Hilda. The girl only spoke up in the final moments. Roberta found the name oddly familiar. Hilda, are you referring to that lord? Meanwhile Ulrich kept rambling on, as if those matters hardly troubled. He absently stroked the gold ring on his thumb. But it seems you all are exceedingly cautious. Here a flash of gentleness crossed Ulrich's usual cold face. On that note, Roberta, I have a hunch you'll be sticking around here for quite some time. Those words left her momentarily dazed. His face didn't look much older than hers, yet she'd begun to notice the harsh marks of time appearing. In the end, Roberta had to accept it. She seemed to have adapted, and only after he finished speaking did she dare say, is that so? But then an unexpected event occurred, and at that moment, as winter's chill started to fade, someone supposedly immortal like Ulrich, that lord, suddenly could not wake from a dream. Without clear reason, he slipped into a deep, prolonged sleep, as if fallen into an eternal slumber.